Welcome everyone. Welcome to Conscious Confidence Radio. I'm Sarah Mane, creator of Conscious Confidence, a Timeless Wisdom. And today's show is very special because we're going to be talking about the 7 steps and how to walk them. And we've got a very special guest, Gilbert Mane. He's been on the show before, but we were talking about education. But this time we're going to be talking about the 7 steps and how to walk them. And Gilbert's going to tell us all about what the 7 steps are and how to walk them. And the reason I got up to wanting to talk about the 7 steps and bringing Gilbert on, because he is the expert, is because in the book Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success, and this is my book that's just come out, I talk about the essential nature and the pivotal role of core values and positive attitude. And then move on to address the whole topic of choice and change and moving from a victimhood mindset to being a victor. So moving from victim to victor. And this brings in the need for transformation, and it brings it into stark relief. There needs to be a change, a transformation. And it addresses the state of being ready to make a decisive change. So that's the background to how we get up to the 7 steps. And then the 7 steps outlines this journey and process of transformation and change. And it is a remarkable banquet, if you like. It just spreads the whole system, the whole process of change and transformation. It lays it all out, and I hope that you have some aha moments about this, because I learned this when I was younger, and certainly it has informed all sorts of things in my life where I've been able to understand it in the context of the 7 steps. So this knowledge is really useful and it's really profound. And so I'd like to introduce Gilbert. Welcome, Gilbert.
Hi.
And thank you for coming along.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Gilbert has written a whole book on 7 steps to freedom. And I know you can probably see it, but this is the book here. And it's available on Amazon, and you can get it as Kindle or as a hard copy version. But Gilbert wrote a whole book on it, and he's going to tell us all about 7 steps and how to walk them. So, Gilbert, tell us about the background to how you got interested in the 7 steps.
Thanks. Okay, sure. What happened was, as you know, we met together studying meditation, mindfulness, focus, attention, all these sorts of things, working under guidance of our teachers and our gurus to overcome our own sort of limitations, habits, the sorts of things that would block the journey to freedom and happiness and higher consciousness. And part of the teaching, part of the academic curriculum, if you like, to put it that way, of the organisation of which we were part, the School of Philosophy in Sydney, was this doctrine of the 7 steps. And one of our gurus, Shantananda Saraswati, was asked about this, and he said, well, these are the 7 steps, and he laid them out and said what they were and expounded a bit on them. And I just found that this came up again and again, and I was interested in it. And when it came to be my turn to pass on some of this wisdom to others and to give talks and to package up some of this in a way that was interesting for people, when I talked about education or even Plato and philosophy and things like that, that the 7 steps used to figure quite prominently in my presentations because I just became very interested in this process. So when it came time to write a book, I thought, well, that's a good topic. It breaks itself up easily into 7 chapters with an introduction and a conclusion. And I knew a bit about it. I had studied it up. I'd looked at the Sanskrit. And so my first book, which was published a few years ago, was called 7 Steps to Freedom, because that's how I actually experienced walking that path.
And where are the 7 steps derived from? I know we were given an outline of them, but they are in the wisdom tradition. So can you talk a little bit about where they're actually sourced from in those traditions?
Sure. The 7 steps first appear in a work called the Yoga Vasishta, And this is a record of the conversations between Prince Rama and his guru, sage Vasishta. Rama was the hero of the Ramayana, which is one of the great Indian epics. His wife Sita is kidnapped by evil Ravana. He and his brother Lakshmana go off to fight the evil demons, and the monkey army accompanies them. And this is the way of expressing these 7 steps in the form of a gripping and exciting story. But there are also other versions of this same journey, and the Yoga Vasishta is one of them. And in it, Prince Rama says to his teacher, what are the ways of going through to wisdom, to self-realization, to happiness, to freedom? And Sage Vasishta says, well, there are 7 steps, and these are the 7. And he just lays them out very, very briefly, actually. But the sages over time spotted this as being a very key part of the teaching, so they have expounded on them in great detail over the years.
And so in relation to the problem that we face these days, let's bring it into, our realm of experience. What is the actual problem? So we're going to learn about the 7 steps, and Gilbert's going to tell us about them. But what is the actual problem that we're addressing in relation to learning about the 7 steps?
Well, it's like we're on a journey, and we have to start from somewhere. And the question is, where are we now, and where do we start, and why do we even want to take the journey? Pardon me. If you're somewhere and you want to be somewhere else, you have to find a way of moving from one place to another. So if you want to be in a state of courage, you want to be in a state of conscious confidence, you want to be in a state of freedom and happiness and clarity, that implies that you are in a state of fear, of insecurity, of narrowness, of being bound, of a state of ignorance, a state of not knowing what things are going on in your life and what the reason for them is. So if you want to take that journey, that's why you would take the 7 steps, because they take you from where you are. This is one of the nice things about them. They don't just expound some ideal state of blissful freedom and leave you in a position of even greater confusion because you don't even know how to get there. It takes you from a starting point of where you actually are. And for most people these days, what Sarah and I have both found, I found it as a headmaster of a children's school, was that people are pretty fearful, basically. To put it bluntly, they're feeling insecure, they're feeling fearful, and they lack direction. They don't know where to go to find some form of certainty, some form of clear guidance, something that will calm their fears and give them confidence and allow them to move forward. Just to give a very, very easy example, I used to interview, obviously, parents, but often it was the mothers. And these are the parents of the child. They gave birth to the child, they've raised the child, they've cleaned it, they've fed it, they've dressed it, they've clothed it. They have performed amazing work by the time the child comes to the school when they're 5 years old, and yet they're incredibly insecure about their own parenting. And I used to say, well, look, the system we follow is a technical system. It's called MKB. And what that stands for is mother knows best. In other words, not just the mother, obviously father and mother, parents know best. Whatever their instincts are for the welfare of that child through love and intelligence and reason is going to work. And all I needed to do is say that to supply a certain level of confidence in their choices. So it's that sort of thing where you get guidance, and that's a starting point. And the 7 steps are a well-credentialed system, pathway, if you like, a series of steps that you can take to get from a state of fear and insecurity, lacking confidence, to a state of freedom and happiness.
And have you found knowing about the 7 steps useful in your own life?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. That was one of the reasons I became so interested in it. It wasn't just a mere academic study. I followed them. I just, here's a series of steps. I walked them. If someone tells you this is how to cook a souffle and they produce really good souffles, then you'd be well advised to follow the recipe. And we had some very good souffle cookers in our life who told us this is what you need to do. So following them from step 1 through to step 7 is a highly recommended technique if you actually want this thing to work.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break, and after the break we're going to go delve into the 7 steps, what they are. We'll tell you what the 7 steps are, the characteristics of each of the steps, and how to get started. And this is the 7 steps to freedom or transformation, where you go from where you are into to where you want to be, the transformation you want to see and you want to experience. Because people talk about change all the time. Well, there is a process, and the wisdom traditions have got it covered. They laid it all out. It's not guesswork. And we had the benefit of learning about this many years ago, and it certainly helped us. And it came up to put it into my book, and I thought, well, rather than just talk about my book and the chapter about the 7 steps to transformation and change in my book, let's get the expert in, because Gilbert wrote a whole book just on this topic. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to delve into the 7 steps. Can you just give everyone a little taste? What's in Sanskrit, the first step?
Oh, the first step in Sanskrit is called Shubhet Cha.
And what does that mean?
Shubhet Cha is the good impulse, is one way it's translated. It means that you hear something good is suggested to you from an authoritative source, and you nod in agreement to it. You think, yeah, that sounds good. So something good is presented and you say, yep, that's I'm going to do that. That's the first step. It's quite an easy one.
So Shubhet Cha, we're going to start with Shubhet Cha after the break, and then we're going to get into the other 7 steps as well. So stay tuned for Good Impulse, and we'll see you soon. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Conscious Confidence Radio. I'm Sarah Mane, and this is Gilbert Mane, my husband. Yes, he's my husband, and expert in today's topic, which is the 7 steps and how to walk them. And these are the 7 steps to transformation, the process of the 7 steps of change or transformation. And I asked Gilbert to come join me today in today's show, because Gilbert's the expert on this, because he wrote a whole book on it. My book, Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success, has 1 chapter on the 7 steps. Gilbert has a whole book on it, and it's a fascinating book, absolutely marvellous. It's available on Amazon. He wrote it 10 years ago, so it's been around a while. And naturally, I had to call on him because he's got such a depth of knowledge about this topic. And in the first segment, we were just introducing the background to the 7 steps a little bit, and where it fits in the wisdom traditions and what it is. But now we're going to go in depth into each of the 7 steps. And I thought Gilbert would read where the passage actually is from the Yoga Vasishta, which is the wisdom tradition from which the 7 steps is taken. So do you want to read that first?
So this is from Yoga Vasishta, and this is where Prince Rama asks Vasishta how to find freedom, how to find wisdom. And Vasishta replies, he says, I shall now describe to you, O Rama, the 7 states or planes of wisdom. Knowing them, you will not be caught in delusion. Pure wish or intention is the first. That's Shubhet Cha, which we talked about at the end of the first segment. Inquiry is the second. The third is when the mind becomes subtle. Establishment in truth is the 4th. Total freedom from attachment or bondage is the 5th. The 6th is cessation of objectivity. And the 7th is beyond all these. So hence Yoga Vasishta.
Right. So they're the 7 steps laid out. So what are the 7 steps? Can you now tell us what the 7 steps are? Let's go from 1 to 7. And we'll have them in Sanskrit. And then can you just give a brief description? Because the Sanskrit may not be meaningful to everyone. So we had Shubhechcha at the end of the previous segment. So
Shubhechcha is the first one. That is the good impulse. The second one is Suvicharana, is the one way of describing it, which is true inquiry. And the third one is Tanumanasa. The fourth one is Satwapati. Then you have Asang Sakti. The sixth one is Padartha Bhavani. And the last one is Turiya.
okay, so that's Shubhechcha, Suvicharana, Tanumanasa, Satwapati, Asang Sakti, Padartha Bhavani,
And Turiya.
and Turiya. So they're the 7 steps in Sanskrit. So let's just go back over them and outline the process. I've given them description in my book, and you've in your book, 7 Steps to Freedom. You've given a particular way of describing them, so as well, which is slightly different from mine.
Yeah.
So the first one, Shubhechcha, is the actual word is good impulse.
Yeah. Shubha means something good or beneficial, and each cha is a verb meaning to agree, to nod, to nod in agreement. So someone comes along to you and says, look, you're looking a bit overweight, you should go on a diet. And you go, yeah, I think there's probably something in that. You've done step 1. Step 1's done. So I wrote a story which Sarah put in her book, and because we were both teachers of young children, a lot of what we do in the form of stories. And the story is called The City of Seven Gates. And it starts this way. It says, one day a man, wanting freedom, heard that he would find it in the City of Seven Gates. He set out on the road looking for that wonderful city. After searching for a long time, he came to a fertile valley. In that valley was a beautiful city surrounded by 7 walls, each pierced by a single gate. He had found the City of Seven Gates. At the first gate, he asked, what must I do to pass through this gate? You have already fulfilled the task, said the gatekeeper. Having been told of the City of Seven Gates, you set out to find it. Arriving here is the test of the first gate. The seeker passed through the first gate into the city.
Right. So it's that assent. It's that saying yes.
It's saying yes to a suggestion by someone who knows what they're talking about. Yeah. A tennis coach, a French teacher, someone who's teaching you how to do a souffle, and you go, yeah, that makes sense, I'll try that out. You don't know anything yet, you haven't done it, you haven't practiced your forehand, you haven't started learning French verbs or conversation, you haven't got the ingredients for the souffle yet, but you have decided that you are going to give it a go. It's made sense to you. And in some ways, the first step is quite an easy one because it makes sense, but it does require you to do something. It isn't all from the outside. You have to assent. You have to agree. And, well, it sounds easy, but also you have to get yourself into a position where you know you need guidance, where you want to sign up for the cooking program, where, in our case, you want to go free. You understand that you are insecure and fearful and lack direction, and you need to find guidance. This is your first understanding, and then you go in search of that guidance. And I spend a lot of time in my book talking about how do you actually find that guidance. And a good way of starting on that is simply to ask. Even if no one else is around, put the question to yourself, put the question to the universe, how can I find a guide? How can I get out of this? How can I find someone who will give me direction? And if you're looking at this program, you're looking at a source of the wisdom anyway, because both of us had enormous help in our way, and we've both written books to try to capture the things that our teachers taught us. And
so this pivotal point of change starts with the good impulse, where it can be anything. You can turn on the TV and someone says something that connects with you, so you're open and receptive. Something's searching, something in you is wanting that change, and then you sort of suddenly wake up, and once you hear it or see it, you can't unhear it or unsee it. There is a shift.
Yeah.
In the way I describe it in my book is inspiration, and we're inspired to transform. And the way I've described it, we're inspired to transform from where we are to where we want to be something greater. A desire for change arises and we decide to take action. And a great yoga teacher, Patanjali, he spoke about the power of inspiration, and that was back somewhere in the 2nd to 4th century AD or BCE. I mean, the wisdom traditions have been talking about this for a long, long time in great clarity and great detail. So first step is Shubhechcha. Now tell us about the second step, Suvicarana.
Suvicarana means true inquiry. That's one way of translating it. And true inquiry, we think of inquiry as something sort of academic, where you look into something, you study it up, you read about it, you think about it. But true inquiry is a transformative stage where you take information and you turn it into experience and understanding and ultimately knowledge and wisdom. So there's quite a lot happening at stage 2. In fact, in some ways, stage 2 is where all the action's happening, where everything that you can do is done. And then the other stages sort of take care of themselves, which is actually quite good news, because you actually don't have to do 7 steps. The first step is you simply nodding and saying, yes, okay, I will sign up for that course, I will read that book, I will study what you have to say. And then the second step is where all the work is done. You study the teaching, you put it into practice, you assess your own experience. How did it work? What actually happened? Was what the guru was saying true? What the teacher, the master, the mistress, whoever you're listening to, you're assessing for yourself what their teaching involves, and slowly you're beginning to assimilate their teaching into your being, and you're transforming, you're changing already. If their teaching is how to go from fear to fearlessness, from insecurity to confidence, from cowardice to courage, then naturally you're undertaking a process of transformation by inquiring in a reasonable, focused, attentive, conscious way into the teaching of these teachers. That's Suvicarana.
Suvicarana. So it's a dynamic situation, and you're fully engaged. It's not a passive thing where someone's just telling you what to do. You actually have to do it, don't you?
Yeah.
And put it into practice, and as you say, assess your own experience and how it's going, and that will naturally bring up more questions. So there's further inquiry, and you're delving down, and then you practice that. It's not random, but there's definitely a process of inquiry and exploration. It will be a bit different. The experience will be different for everybody.
Yes.
Because everyone, you need to engage with the transformation yourself. You're on this journey yourself.
Yeah, and
you need company, though. Can you talk about that?
Well, what I was going to say was also the first and second steps do have this. Well, it's not a negative. It's actually quite a positive, but it does divide you. You are your habitual, normal self with all of the baggage that you bring, the limitations. Suddenly, there's light shone on all of that, and so the first and second steps can appear to be a bit up and down, a bit turbulent, and you can in fact appear to go through even deeper insecurities and maybe even a deeper sort of darkness, because suddenly you're confronted with your own limitations, and hence the need for good company, people on the way, teachers, guides, and people who are also treading that journey, which is one of the reasons why it's not a bad idea to sign up for, say, an organisation or a school, but at the same, or just keep good books, good music, good art, good literature around you, and people you can call on to help you.
So between the first and second steps, now we've got the third step. We're up to the third step, which is Tanamanasa, and we're going to take a break and come back, talk about Tanamanasa, because that finishes off the final section of the first 3 steps. So after this break, we'll come back and we'll talk about Tanamanasa, which is the third step in the 7 steps. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Conscious Confidence Radio. I'm Sarah Mane, and this is Gilbert Mane. He's my husband, and he's author of 7 Steps to Freedom. And I asked Gilbert to come and speak today because he wrote a whole book on a topic. In my book, I've only got one chapter on the 7 steps, and Gilbert wrote a whole book on it. So you can put and we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about this in more detail and spend a whole show on it, because the 7 steps is a crucial bit of information you need about the process of transformation and change. Otherwise, it just seems random. All these things are happening. But there is actually a process, and the wisdom tradition set it out. And it came, and the wisdom tradition specifically that Gilbert drew from for his book, and I did for the chapter in my book, is from the Yoga Vasishta. And so in the previous segments, we talked about the first step, which is Shubhechcha, the good impulse that gets the process going, the inspiration. Something new comes in and you go, aha, and you sort of say yes to it, and it's an assent. And then the second step is Suicharana, which is the inquiry. In my book, I describe it as application. There's inquiry, there's action, you follow guidance from new knowledge, and it takes some effort. And you need good company, and you need to engage with people doing the same sort of thing as you and interested in the same sort of thing. Because it's very difficult to do that step on its own, on your own and on its own. You need the support, the company, and you'll find yourself naturally gravitating to people who are interested in the same things that you are interested in, and you want to talk about them because this is new and you're discovering new things. And it takes effort. This is where the real work, so to speak, takes place. So now we're up to the third step, Tanumanasa in Sanskrit. Can you talk about Tanumanasa?
Sure. Tanumanasa is a stage where the mind begins to thin and go on a bit of a diet. Tanu is where we get words like tenuous or attenuate in English. And it means, well, it's a bit confronting. It means to starve or to go on a diet, basically, to make thinner. And manasa is the Sanskrit word for mind. So what that means in practice is you're limiting negative, the troublesome aspects of your being, of your mind, the things that there's the negative self-talk, the insecurities, the fears, the things we talked about before. These become thinner. These become less powerful. They begin to fade away. And they do that through the process of steps 1 and 2. You hear something, you go, that sounds reasonable. You put it into practice, you inquire into it reasonably, and it begins to become part of your nature. And the way that happens is your habits change. So bad habits are replaced by better habits, and better habits are replaced by even better habits than that, until finally you have the best habits. And these become part of your daily life. So Tanumanasa is a stage of thinning of the mind. The negative falls away, the heaviness drops away, and what you're left with is a sort of clarity, freedom, a sense of space, a sense where the mind becomes part of your repertoire, it becomes part of your toolbox, where you can use reason, you can use your intellect, you can use memory, and also the monkey mind begins to become quieter and begins to become more in order, so that you can move forward and take all the rest of the steps 4, 5, 6, and ultimately 7 as well.
Right. So I find this Tanumanasa such an interesting description, this attenuation of the mind, the thinning of the mind. And you can see that in your own experience. If you get an inspiration or an idea to start something, and then you have to work at it. And at first it's sort of fairly, grunt work. You're working at a fairly coarse, low level, just learning things, making a lot of mistakes, and you need the mistakes. That's how you learn, and you're assessing your own experience, asking more questions, learning more, and it goes on. And then there's a certain point where you've learned enough that you don't need to make all those mistakes. You've made a lot of them. People say a good way of learning is to fail quickly. Get through the learning of mistakes, and it's a necessary process. And we were both teachers for 30 years, so we recognise that process well in our students and in ourselves. And you get to this point where it's a much more disciplined, the discipline is emerging within yourself.
Yeah.
When you suddenly find you can do whatever you've set out to do at a level, you suddenly think, hey, I'm doing this, I can do this. And that is a golden time, it's a blessed time, but it does require the work in order to get to that point. And I think one thing we learned from teaching and in our own experience is the quality of persistence, just keeping on regardless of how difficult it is. Just keeping on is very important in this phase, in these first 3 phases, because you need to refresh the inspiration so that it doesn't wane. You need the company, you need the knowledge, you need the inquiry, you need the effort, and then you need to go back and practice again. You need that whole process, and to reach a point where things start refining enough that you suddenly think, yes, I can do this.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that persistence?
Yes, one of the ways of the technical term for it is called task commitment, which is sort of self-explanatory. You just need to stick at it, and we all know this. This isn't a mystery. This isn't a spiritual concept. This is the same with learning anything new. As I say, tennis, French, whatever. You need to actually stick at something, and the reason you need to stick at it is because you have got a state. You're not a blank slate. You come with habits, you come with limitations, you come with sort of grooves that you've already carved deeply into your heart and into your mind, and you need to fill in some grooves and re-carve others. You need to basically change, and change is a process. Change requires choice. You need to choose to change, and then you need to actually do something. And as I said, the first 2 stages can throw up distractions, can throw up blockages. And it's a commonplace thing that when you start on something, a lot of people leave projects half finished or 3/4 finished or even 9/10 finished, because in the end there's a certain resistance to change there's an inertia in our being. And Tanu Manasa is a descriptive sort of state where you get to a point where those habits, those limitations, those blockages are thinning. They're beginning to give way, and sometimes it can be quite, you can think, oh, I'm fighting, I'm getting nowhere, and all of a sudden you break through and you're in this free state in something you've been studying. Some day you suddenly realize, now I can do it. Yes, I've got through to that stage. And that's Tanu Manasa. It's only stage 3, so, but it is a very important stage because it also holds out a certain promise of freedom, of ultimate freedom. You're now beginning to experience for yourself the fruits of your own work. And it's really, really, really important to know that, so that you're encouraged to keep going even further to steps 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Right. So we've got inspiration, application, and I describe it as assimilation in my book, is another way. So we've got these 3 steps, and these are the absolute foundation of it all. And then there's this need for continuation, for persistence. You need to keep going, a need to re-energize and persevere, because we've got to work through the limiting habits and complacency that can reassert themselves and derail the process, and progress can stop. So assuming we keep going, then we reach the 4th stage, which is Sattva-pati. Can you talk about that? Illumination.
Illumination. Sattva-pati is, the word sattva in Sanskrit is a really interesting word. We get our words like satisfaction from that word. Sattva is a description of a state of consciousness which is clear and mindful. This is mindfulness. This is where mindfulness lives. This is where meditation, the state of inner peace, calm. This is where people, this is the consummation devoutly to be wished, as Shakespeare describes it. And it is like a platform. It's a transformation of being. Now you're a new person. At level 4, you've really come through a lot of the work and the heavy lifting that has to be done at 1 and 2. The attenuation of the mind has taken place gradually over time, and then you're left clear of some of the ballast. Your hot air balloon is now flying. You've thrown the sandbags out of the basket, and you're up in the air now, and you're seeing the world in a very, very different way. And sattva is that state of consciousness. It's described by some people as swan energy. It's that calm, peaceful sort of consciousness that allows you to know yourself to the degree that you can, and to know others. And it's a pivotal point because you're no longer really looking back at the first 3 steps, which are like the first 3 gates of the city. Now you're looking forward to the last 3. 4 is a very pivotal point, and it's like a platform. Usually at this point, it's not easy to fall backwards. Your habits have really given way, and you're now ready to take the final steps to freedom.
And that's really this indication of transformation. You're not battling against old habits. There is a transformation into a new level of being.
And you're in a position to teach others.
Yeah.
You can become, at this stage, you have enough experience and of the wisdom of your own teachers to be able to turn around and reach out a helping hand to anyone else who needs help.
So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll just finish off steps 5, 6 and 7, which really take care of themselves, and the effort is different. It's the difference of an effort like this to an effort like that. It changes in the final steps. And we'll go, after the break, we'll go to a break now, and then we will come back and cover off on the final 3 steps, and then talk about the practical application of this in our lives, the 7 steps to freedom. So we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to our conversation today on the 7 steps and how to walk them with my guest Gilbert Mane, author of 7 Steps to Freedom. And we've been talking about the 7 steps to freedom or transformation, drawn from the Yoga Vasishta, the wisdom tradition. And we got up to we just finished in the previous segment on the 4th step. So we've done Shrupechcha, Suvicharana, Tanumanasa and Sattwapati, the inspiration, application, assimilation and illumination. So they're the first 4 steps. And then we're going to talk about now, if you wouldn't mind talking about the final 3 steps.
Sure. The final 3 steps are Asang Sakti, Adartha Bhavani, and Turiya. And they're tricky because they're so subtle and they're so, you can describe them all, but they're in a way, you're trying to describe the indescribable. Really, the consciousness is now beginning to take over, beginning to guide your life. To give one example, level 5, for example, what is said is there's a state where you see the whole world as your family. See all the men, all the women, all the children as your brothers, as your sisters, as your wives and daughters, as your own children. And that's a genuine state. It isn't an idealized state. You simply see everybody as bound by the love of a single family. That's just obviously a wonderful state.
And as mother and father.
Mother and father too,
Yeah.
That's right. And everyone is your teacher at that point too. You sort of transcend the need for the formalities of teaching. And Sarah has a wonderful story in her book of a lady who was running to see a guru who was in town, and she tripped and fell, and she was on the street and a truck screeched to a halt and the driver glared at her, and in the conversation with Sarah, this lady realized that the teacher in that situation was the truck driver, and that she learnt an enormous amount about her own need to look for externals and began to discover the teacher was actually inside in her heart. This is a wonderful state. So Asang Sakti is a very beautiful state to be in. Adartha Bhavani is a state where you simply don't see differences. Everything is one thing. All love is all the different loves that you see of a mother for a child, of an enthusiast for a sport team, all you see is the love. You don't see the differences anymore. And again, it's a beautiful state to be in, and it takes care of itself. There's no effort here. You perhaps want to talk about that change of effort.
Yeah, the first 3, the description we were taught, and certainly within the experience, is the first 3 steps. The effort. There's a firm, decisive effort, an approach and a focus. And then from step 4, which is Satwapati, the effort changes from this to this. So you're holding firm to a discipline, and then there's a surrender. And it's all about surrender, as you mentioned, to the consciousness. So it is completely different. And in a way, both of us, we have been careful in our books about not over-describing this, because it is not a matter of the mind anymore. There is a surrender there, and the consciousness directs the whole thing. And you have to be very, very careful that you can fool yourself about this with the mind controlling it all, and that's not what it's about. It is about surrender in the moment. So we've kept a light touch on how we've described it in our books, but there's this penetration and a detachment, an invulnerable and unmoved deepening of the transformation. That's how I've sort of described it in my book. And then the dissolution, where separation has dissolved and no differences exist. And that is genuine and abiding. It's not created in the mind. That is a real lived experience, an abiding one too. And then completion is just pure limitless freedom in Turiya, isn't it? And there's nothing to be said about that really.
It's not really a state.
It's not a state. So the first 3 steps are the crucial ones, and then the rest really take care of themselves. The focus needs to be on Shubhechcha, the inspiration, then Suvicharana, the application, and then Tanumanasa, the assimilation. And then the illumination and penetration, dissolution and completion all take care of themselves. And this process of description it's applicable obviously to the transformation of consciousness, but also in the way we create something or act in an everyday way. So can you talk about the application of that in everyday life?
Well, in everyday life, if you want to build a cubby house for your children, you get the inspiration, you begin to get plans and a diagram, and you look it up on the internet and gather your tools, and then you begin to act and build the thing, and then it begins to take shape. And then as you go through, the final thing is you've got the completed project that you embarked upon. So as a practical matter, in life, the 7 steps start with realizing you have something that you want to, somewhere you want to be that you haven't got there yet, finding a teacher, and in our case, a teacher of consciousness, a teacher of confidence, a teacher of courage and awareness, and then studying their teaching and making it part of your own life. So finding a teacher, doing what they say, making it part of your own life.
Right. That's nice and simple and practical. So you've written a whole book. Tell us where you can find your book. How can people get your book?
It's on Amazon. You can get it as a Kindle, or you can get the hard copy. You go to Amazon, look up my name, or look up 7 Steps to Freedom, and you'll find several of my books, but this is one of them.
And speaking of several of his books, Gilbert has written other books as well.
Oh, yes.
He's got a website. So what's your website?
GilbertMane.com.
So that's GilbertMane.com. GilbertMane.com. Yep. And quickly tell us about your books.
Well, I moved on to writing novels, partly as Sarah suggested I do. And I thought, well, okay. And so I gave it a go. And this is my first novel. The second one has come back from the editor, and the third one's well underway. It's a rollicking good read. It's a conspiracy thriller, but it does have, you might, if you read it, find a few elements of the 7 steps embedded in there.
Right. And Gilbert also, back in our educational career, wrote a chapter in a book called Education and the Ideal. And he wrote a chapter on education. And
that chapter's on Amazon.
And that chapter is on Amazon as well.
How Noble in Reason.
How Noble in Reason. So there's some interesting things. Gilbert's got a broad range of interests and writes beautifully. So it's well worth going to Amazon and searching for him, Gilbert Mane, and seeing the things that he's written, because they're all available there. And my book, Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success, is out now. There it is. Ta-da! Very happy with that. And that's out now on Amazon. If you go there, you can find it and check it out. It's available on Kindle and in hard copy, as you can see, and there is an audio book which is coming out soon as well. So Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success. And I'm also on social media. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. So go and check me out there. There's content there. Follow me. Ask me any questions. Drop me a comment on something, one of the posts. Ask me a question. I'm delighted when I get questions. I love that sort of thing. Go to my website, consciousconfidence.com, and that's where you can find out more about conscious confidence, the work that I do. There's a link to more radio podcasts that I've done. There's a tab on the website. So there's plenty of material to learn about conscious confidence and how the wisdom in Sanskrit, and you'll notice that we've been referring to Sanskrit as we've gone along, the wisdom in Sanskrit can give you all sorts of knowledge and help and guidance and deepen your understanding, and that will enrich your life. And so to finish off, I usually finish each show with a bit of Sanskrit, and today I'm going to sing the perfect prayer, which is a beautiful prayer. That is perfect. This is perfect. Perfect comes from perfect. Take perfect from perfect. The remainder is perfect. May peace and peace and peace be everywhere. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.